All right, so I'd like to say hello. Uh, this is Suni again. Tonight's topic is going to be called sponsorship. Yep, AANA 12 step sponsorship. And this is just my perspective. And I like to say, number one, that I don't represent any particular organization or I don't have an organization on my own that I'm forming. The videos that I'm putting out is just very simply from my experience, and I just it's just my experience, and that's it. Tonight I'm going to cover sponsorship in the 12-step program. So the ultimate question is, what is a sponsor? What is a sponsor? When a new person comes to the 12-step program, one of the suggestions that's suggested to them is that they get a sponsor. They say, well, you need to get a sponsor. And that being said, is my headphones is off. So that being said, is a sponsor is somebody that has a working knowledge of the program. It's very simple. Somebody that has a working knowledge of the 12-step program. When I say a working knowledge, that means how the program works, how the steps work of that program, and and the relationship is to help the individual uh, inside the 12-step program. That's what it is. Help is to guide the person. I'm got some things going on, but I'm about to get them straightened out. So it's to help the individual um, or guide them through the program. And when I say the program, I mean the material of that particular program. So if you're in AA, it's AA literature, AA steps, uh, maybe some fellowship type stuff, you know, guide them in the fellowship, how the fellowship works, how meeting works, anything to the socialization process of the fellowship. And it's the same way inside the NA program, and I'm quite sure it is with any other program. So that's basically what a sponsor is. It's nobody that's going to pay your rent for you, loan you money. Y'all don't have to be friends. And one suggestion is that the friendship is developed because the ship, after the end of sponsor, suggests there is a relationship. But however, the relationship is not, however, the relationship is not like it is in a regular relationship, like being friends, hanging out, and all that. Although that can happen. So, since I just turned my recorder on, I'm gonna recap that a little bit. So, a sponsor, okay, then the title of this particular piece here is what is sponsorship in the 12-step program? AA sponsorship, NA sponsorship, and it's going to be basically the same. It's going to be the same. And a sponsor is just a person that has a working knowledge of the 12-step program, like I said before. And if it's AA or NA, it's going to be AA literature or NA literature. Most important, the step process, how the step process goes. So the sponsors program, the sponsors working knowledge, as we call it, of the steps will be vital to the newcomer. Also the literature, each program has their own set of literature. And that sponsor will be able to guide that person not only through the steps, but also through the literature, how the literature is applied, also through the what we call the traditions. the steps, the traditions, the concept, service work. These are all the things that the sponsor does. So now the next question is, how does a newcomer get a sponsor? What happened with me is when I attended my very first meeting, uh, my sponsor was chosen for me by the group. The guy that brought me to the meeting, name is Frank. I never will forget. Frank brought me to the meeting, and he brought me to my first meeting. And then at that particular time, I wanted to, I said, okay, well, this is cool. They had coffee, they had donuts. I sat around, I heard some people sharing, I heard my story told. And so then we left. And he said, well, would you like to make another meeting? And I said, well, yeah, I'll make another meeting. And I went to the next meeting. I went to another meeting. And at that particular meeting, they let me introduce myself. I do remember. I don't know if I shared or not, but I do remember introducing myself. And they told Frank, they said, Frank, you're going to be his sponsor. I don't know if it was the meeting chairperson or secretary or just a regular member, but I do remember them saying, Frank, you're going to be his sponsor. And at the end of the meeting, Frank told me he was my sponsor, and I was like, cool. I didn't know what was going on. But at the same time, Frank was my sponsor. And I remember him as a sponsor taking me through the 12 steps. Frank took me through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I didn't know what I was doing. I just did what he said. Then we went to another meeting again. And he told me what a home group was, and he suggested I make that group my home group, and I did. And I learned how to make coffee. I learned how to set that meeting up, and I came to that meeting regularly. And Frank immediately, I can say, started me doing step work. I mean, he didn't wait no 30 days. He didn't wait no year or nothing like that, And I do remember that he was at that time was 14 years sober, because when he told me he was 14 years sober, I didn't believe it. I thought he was lying. I was like, yeah, all right, sure. But for the sake of my career that I had at the time, I didn't criticize none of that, what he was saying. So on the recap, I think it was like my second meeting I went to, since Frank brought me to the meeting. They appointed him as my sponsor. They told me that's what I needed. They told me what the sponsor was for. Then Frank became my sponsor, and I did what he said do. I did what he said do, for the most part. We became, now I have to say this, Frank was a white. He was a white, and he was from the Panhandle of Oklahoma, and I was from Detroit, Michigan. So I had a little problem with that, and I'll be real honest, very, very honest with that. Because some of the things that he had me do as a sponsor, like I remember him saying, write your, he said, your inventory is going to be your drug history. And I was like, really? And, I grew up in Detroit, streets of Detroit, I'm 20. I'm about 27 at the time, maybe late 20s, early 30s at the time. I'm like 28, and he asked me to write an inventory of all the things I had did. And I was like, really, man? And so we went on. We started like that, and I'm not gonna get off into what we call the drug law in the fellowship I'm in now. But I wrote all that out. It took me a couple times because he didn't. I I was not quite thorough the first time doing this thing, and really what it was I didn't trust Frank, so therefore I was not really truthful with him because in the environment I grew up in, you just didn't trust white people. And I'm gonna be real frank about that. We just didn't, you know. And you look at Detroit in 66 and 67 and 68, and I grew up in there in the inner city. But one thing I did respect about Frank was I knew, he told me his story, and I heard him stand up and tell people his story. And I could identify with a lot of stuff he said. So it wasn't that I didn't have no trust in him. It was certain things that I wasn't turning over right quick until our relationship developed. That's what it was. And then when I knew that in order to go through the step process, and we got to that honesty, that open-mindedness, and that willingness thing, and then I was reminded of the fact how I got to where I was, and I could easily go back to where I came from if I wasn't forthcoming and allowing somebody to help me and develop this relationship. So I would say within 3 weeks, Frank was my man. The color thing didn't matter. Where he came from didn't matter. And where I came from didn't matter because I had received a thorough whooping from my primary symptoms. And I had at least 2, 3. At least 2, 3 going on. So Frank, as my sponsor, and I thank God that I had somebody that had so much experience in this exemplifying patience, tolerance, unconditional love. Those 3 principles, open-mindedness, his willingness, his honesty towards a cat like me. So what I'm saying about another thing about sponsorship from my experience, the color didn't matter. It did not. Where I was from didn't matter. And I'm saying as the relationship grew, because he was my sponsor for about a year. And the only reason why we separated was because I moved out the country that I was in. That's what happened with that. So Frank taught me a lot in my first year. My first year in recovery, I had learned a whole lot. And this man had 14 years. And I had to say 14 years of AA because at that time, AA was the only fellowship that I really dealt with. That was the only fellowship I knew. That's where I came from. That's where I started from. So Frank showed me about the literature. He gave me, he didn't start me off on the first step. He didn't say, okay, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol. This is where you at. This man started me off with an inventory first. He started me off with an inventory. Then we went to honesty. Then we went to open-mindedness. Then we went to willingness. And at the same time, he convinced me that this program could work like it worked for him because I kept questioning his sobriety. I did. When he told me he had 14 years, I was like, man, for real. And every now and then I ask him, I try to catch him up. I say, you really got 14? You ain't had a sip in 14 years. Because I remember me, man, I tried many times. And many times I failed. But he told me, he said, yeah, man. He said, yes, sir. Yes, sir, bub. Yes, sir, bub. You know. And it's been over 30 years, 34 years since I seen this man, but I still see his image in my face. I mean, I still envision this man. And I got love for him. He was older than me too. I was like about 28, 26 maybe, and he was like 40 something. You know. So anyway, the sponsor, my first sponsor was appointed to me by the group. Then my sponsor, he guided me through the 12 steps, and he guided me through every step. Starting off with the inventory, the drug inventory thing, and then we moved on to honesty. He actually gave me my definition of what honesty is today. He said, what's the difference between telling the truth and being honest? To me, it was the same thing. I said, well, they the same. He said, well, no, it's not. He said, one is verbal, and the other one is verbal, followed by consistent behavior with whatever you put out. So if you said one thing and you had a behavior that was consistent with it, you know. And so that's what it was. And then he took me through open-minded and willing. And I could see how he was even open-minded and willing because he dealt with me. You know, he agreed to be my sponsor. When they okay, so let me tell y'all, let me share this here little story, you know. So I think it was like our fourth meeting we had went to. And so Frank had showed me how to set a meeting up. Put the chairs out, make the coffee, set the literature out, and so forth. So what happened was he took me to the home group, the group that eventually became my home group. And what happened was I was supposed to set the whole meeting up and make the coffee. So Frank, he dipped out. He left me in the meeting spot, and he dipped out to go do something. He went to go pick somebody up, or he went to go do something. You know what I did? I took the meeting. I set the chairs up the opposite way that they were supposed to go. When I made the coffee, I put salt in the water, and I took the literature, I put it up on the opposite side where it was supposed to go, and I turned it all upside down in the rack. And I put the chairs out backwards. When them people came in front of me, what I was hoping for was somebody to tell me not to come back. That's what I wanted. I wanted somebody to say, hey, he can't come back here no more. And you know what they did? They drunk my coffee a little. You know, they made some more coffee, of course. They put the meeting back like it was supposed to go. And they told me to come back to the next meeting because they told me I was really sick. I thought Frank was going to fire me, tell me, don't come back no more. And he didn't do that. He told me I went to his office like the next day. Well, he dropped me off, and, you know, we had a few words. He told me to come by the office. I went by his office the next day because I knew he was going to tell me I was fired. I knew he was going to tell me that he can't sponsor me no more. And he didn't tell me none of that. He just told me he understood. And I looked at this man, and I went back to the group, and I apologized for my behavior, and I kept coming back. You know, my experience with sponsorship has been, you know, I've had relatives in recovery. I never sponsored them. That's not a good idea. Friends in recovery from off the street or different places off work, I never sponsored them because that's not a good idea. Um, I remember one time I was sponsoring this one guy, and we was talking on the phone. He lived in a different city, but we lived in Michigan, and we lived in the same city, but I mean we didn't live in the same city. He lived in like a suburb. Excuse me. So what happened was I get a call from him. Well, I hadn't heard from him like about a week, 7 to 8 days or so. So I received a phone call from him, and he said, well, I'm in a situation. I'm in a hotel, and I got my family here. And I said, okay. And he said, well, can you come by? So I called one of my partners, and I said, well, come on over here with me. Go check on this dude. And we get to the hotel. He got his wife in there. They got 2 beds, twin beds. And it's like 4 of them in there. It's his family. And what he thought sponsorship was I guess, I was a financier or something like that. Because I don't know what he told his wife, but they thought I was going to be paying hotel bills and stuff like that, I was like, nah, that's not what sponsorship is. I find out when sponsorship can be a problem when it start getting personal in the beginning, like loaning money and doing work. I've known people to have their sponsees come over and do work for them, like work on their house or work with them and stuff like that. I don't think it's a good idea. I think in the beginning, sponsorship should be about the business of recovery. Very plain, very simple. It shouldn't be no second guessing in either the sponsor or the sponsee's mind about what's going on inside this particular relationship. Now, how the relationship grows is a different story, but I still tend to keep right now with people that I sponsor. I don't let it get personal because I've been through, in my mind, the gambit. I'm talking about the gambit when it comes to sponsee and sponsor relationship. Keeping it about the business of recovery and what's it for. I've been sponsored myself. I had many other sponsors, after Frank, because when I moved out the country that I met him in, which was Germany, Heidelberg, Germany. After I left Heidelberg and I came back to the United States, and it was best that I got another sponsor. Thank God it was basically the same. Thank God that when I had got my other sponsor, which was in Detroit, he was basically the same. So our relationship was always based on sponsorship, reading, writing, meeting up a couple times a week, and sure we went out. And I've treated my sponsor. My sponsors have treated me. But let's say like borrowing money, hundreds of dollars at a time, certain type of business practices, I don't recommend. And I don't recommend that, period. I've known people that's been sponsoring. I've seen sponsor and sponsorship relationships based up on people that's been in the program for a while. And what happens is the relationship turns personal when 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 money and prestige is involved, that's when it gets like a damper gets put on it. So I would just recommend that from my experience inside of sponsorship and sponsee is that the newcomer, if they don't know, let that group get them a sponsor until this person is able to get their own sponsor, and then get somebody that's got some experience in the program. And when I say experience, and I understand it's going to be based on availability, but I wouldn't have a person with 1 or 2 years sponsoring somebody that just came in. No. I mean, I'm saying, but if that's all that area got, then, that's all they got, and I understand that too. Because I've been in some areas. I remember one area I was in, if you had 5 years, they would consider you, top of the, top of the food chain, whatever. So all I'm saying is that when sponsorship is involved, they call it locality availability. That's one term that's meant for that. So I wouldn't have a person again. I think like 3 to 4 years is good, and that's consistent. That a person's been clean and sober for like 3 to 4 years in a row, and they got a pretty good working knowledge of the area, how the area is, the 12 and 12, the 12 traditions and the 12 steps. They have a working knowledge, and when I say a working knowledge, they've been through the steps at least more than once, every step. Because that's what a sponsor mainly does. Somebody to guide you through the steps of the 12-step program. They ain't there to be your friend, your lover, and all that stuff, which I done been through. Now, I've been through. Oh, yeah. Yes, I've been through it. Men sponsoring women and men sponsoring women and women sponsoring men. I would say locality, and in some fellowships they say that's okay. But I would say this, it's hard for me to sponsor a woman. My quote unquote success rate for sponsoring a woman is very it's very bad. And part of that is this, because one of the elements of spiritual principles that comes out when dealing with another person is empathy. You become empathetic when it comes to listening to a person's story or going through their step work material. And what can happen if you have attraction to that sex, where the same sex or opposite sex, things can happen, and the relationship can get ruined. Yeah, sex can creep in. If it's one of those relationships where we loaning each other money, that can hinder the relationship. Yeah. And I seen that happen with people with time. When I say time, 10, 15, 20, 20 years a piece. I'm talking about years, and they got 20 plus years, 15 plus years. And we let things creep in like that. So like loaning money, like getting to the point where you're so empathetic where you start getting personal. So we have to kind of like watch that. Because what happens is also is that when you're doing the step working process, empathy comes on the table. Empathy has its presence as what do some people call it when they talk about the environment of recovery, a recovery environment. Part of that environment of recovery is empathy. You know, it's not hostility. It's unconditional love and empathy. And what happens in the an attraction can develop. And this is my experience. So ensuring that certain boundaries are in place inside the sponsorship relationship to protect the relationship. Yeah. Things happen. You know, people that become business partners, I mean, I've seen it done, you know, and I've seen it work out fine. But money, prestige, and power can change a person's attitude. And I say attitude. And once attitude is affected in recovery between two people or a group of people, then empathy can go out the window and the ego can easily creep in. Then you got a power greater than all of y'all at work. And it could be a destructive power. Second step, right? Second step, straight out the window. Yeah. The first tradition, straight out the window. So, again, you know, talking about sponsorship. Sponsorship is a person whose primary purpose is to guide the person through the program in which they're a member in, whether it's NA, AA, FA, SA, so forth. That's it. Now I'll say this. So what if a person is coming back? You know, they just coming back, or they have a sponsor, or they have some time in the program. And when I say time, I'm gonna say like 5 years. You know, they got 5 years and they have a working knowledge of the program. But they see this person over here that they want to sponsor them because they quote unquote have something that this person want. You know, they got, you know, how do we say, you know, they got something I want and I want, you know, I want to get the whatever it is they got. Well, what I would say this is have a talk. Sit down and communicate, especially if you're coming from one sponsor or sponsorship family. And I'm gonna talk about sponsorship families right now. You know, as soon as as the next level, as another level of sponsorship. But people should sit down and they should talk and lay it out on the line. Because if you've been around, and especially if you got sponsees, if you've been around, then there should be an open conversation on the expectations of the sponsee-sponsorship relationship. Sure. Now I want to talk about sponsorship families. Sponsorship families. And this is in you know, where you got, you know, sponsor brothers and grand sponsors and all of this. Now, mind you, a support group is in my opinion, is I mean, you know, we had sponsorships in the street, and when we was doing what we were doing, and sure, so a group is an asset. A group is an asset. However, I would say if number one, if a person is agreed to be sponsored by a person and they got more sponsees, it shouldn't be mandatory that they join the quote unquote sponsorship group. If they don't want that, they shouldn't have to have that. That's the way I feel about it. Because sponsorship, at the end of the day, it's a one-on-one relationship. It's not a group thing. It's a one-on-one relationship between the two people. So having a person required to be in a sponsorship family, I don't think is a good thing, because we don't know what, number one, you don't know what the person is recovering from and what kind of issues they have with socialization and trust. You know, especially people coming from a lifestyle where you don't get close to people like that. You know, you don't get close to a group of people. You don't get vulnerable with a group of people. So that's why I believe personally, you know, if I got 4 or 5 sponsees and somebody asked me to sponsor them, and this has happened, they said, well, you know, I really don't want to be a part of all that over there. I just want me and you. Then I have to make a decision. And I tell you, I've sponsored people. I said, well, man, you ain't got to come to this sponsorship family type meeting every other Saturday if you don't want to. You know, we'll make up another time and we'll do your steps just like that. Yeah. So basically, what I'm saying when it comes to the sponsorship family is that it is a one-on-one relationship at the end of the day. That's what it's meant for. And right now, as far as I know of, I haven't seen any literature from any of the other groups that suggest that sponsorship groups are mandatory. However, I will say that for some people they're good. You know, I know sponsorship families right now that's been going on for 20, 25 years, 30. You know. However, I've also known people that shy away from that, you know. And so inside of recovery, people should always be open to a person's needs when it comes to the sponsorship type thing, you know. Some people say having like more than one sponsor, you know. I say, how much confusion do you want? Sometimes it's enough dealing with one sponsor. You know, I heard somebody say, I got a sponsor for the steps, you know, I got a sponsor for service work, you know, and I got a sponsor for whatever. And I've seen it. But like I said, you know, availability in a location, and also a person's working knowledge of the program. Those should determine sponsorship. You know what kind of sponsor you're gonna have. I don't think like color and religion. You know, and I know some people, man, they only sponsor a particular religion. In a fellowship, I heard them say, I ain't sponsoring nothing but this religion over here. I heard him say that. I said, what? Do they got a certain kind of alcohol out there meant for a certain amount of people? Do they have a certain drug out there for a certain? Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen people that only want to be sponsored by a certain type of person. They didn't have that when I was coming in, though, 30 years ago. So I've seen that. Now, you know, if that's what you want to do, but I'm gonna tell you something. Me personally, I don't care what you look like. I don't care what your religion is. what your sexuality is. But when it comes down to sexuality and the individual, I prefer that you let me know if you prefer same sex. I ain't gonna say no that I wouldn't sponsor you, but however, that would be something that I would need to know. If you like men and you want me to sponsor you, I need, don't ask me, say, hey, would you sponsor me? And then we come back about 2, 3 weeks later, you telling me you like men. Because there's a certain dynamic that goes on when men sponsor men and women sponsor women. If a woman comes and asks me to sponsor her and she has a same-sex attraction, I need to know that. I need to know that. I need to know that as far as our relationship is concerned. If you don't tell me that, then you've been dishonest in our relationship. Yeah. So anyway, I covered some of the aspects of sponsorship that I felt are important. Willingness is the spiritual principle of sponsorship. Open-mindedness is the spiritual principle of sponsorship, and more so, being willing to help another person. Because at the end of the day, when the lights go out, that's what it's about, man. What I know to get you where you need to be, the skills that I have in the fellowship. I think if you're in a location where there's ample amount of people there's a lot of people with a, quote unquote, a lot of clean time, and I think 5 years is a lot. Then, we should try to steer these people to be sponsored by those people. I don't think color is an issue. I think it's an illusion when you're dealing with spiritual principles. When you're dealing with spiritual principles don't have a color. They don't have a religion. They don't have a philosophy. They're what they are. That's real. That's real. Love don't have a color. Unconditional love, agape love don't have a color. Recovery does not have a face. That's why the program is called Anonymous. And one word that's connected with anonymous is what? Anonymity, to bear no name. So, that being said, I'd like to thank y'all for listening to my video again. And then again, I'll say, I don't represent any organization. I don't represent any, I'm not making any money. None of that. This is just what I do and what I'm doing right now, for my own recovery. So, we talked about sponsorship, NAAA sponsorship, because the NA and AA is where I grew up in the recovery process. My name is Suni, S-U-N-I. My last name is Sami, S-A-M-I. You could put my name in a search engine on YouTube, and I have a few other videos out. I'll be doing more. I'll be doing videos on light work. I'll be doing 12-step videos in relationship to light work, 12-step videos in relationship to politics, 12-step relationship in relationship to energy work, like, for example, Reiki, Kundalini, chakras, because this is all my experience. So I'll be talking about that. I'll be talking about the 12-step principles and just 12-step principles. I'll be talking about 12-step principles in race, 12-step principles in religion, 12-step principles in different other philosophies, such as yoga, such as several a type of meditations, you know. So stay tuned, stay tuned and subscribe, hit the subscribe button down there. And if you have any comments, leave them, And with that, I'll say thanks for tuning in and see you soon. Thank you. And I'm about to end the stream.